Adventures come in many shapes and sizes, but at their heart lie a location and a personal quest. This time the location is Ethiopia, and the quest? To experience some of the world's best paragliding. These are the ingredients that make a total adventure. Ethiopia, a land more often associated with famine and civil war than adventure, is a land of deserts and mountains, deep rocky ravines, sharp towering peaks and high plateau, empty skies and scorching sun. And that adds up to some of the best thermals anywhere, with plenty of places to take off and land. It's a paradise for paragliders, keen to live their lives on the edge in search of fresh tests of skill and stamina. The thrill that comes from leaping into the unknown. One of the world's top paragliding instructors, Bob Drury, is here with two friends, ex-Royal Marine Innes Powell and Sanskrit scholar Jim Mallinson. All three planning to fly cross-country over Ethiopia's Simien Mountains. But riding these skies to cloud base takes skill. There's big turbulence up there waiting to collapse their gliders, and treacherous rotor winds threatening to suck them back down. Crashing out here means a big walk-in to reach the nearest road. Even with their radios, keeping together will take all Bob's leadership skills. He can't wait.
African plains and African mountains, little mushroom-shaped huts. Tribesmen in furs running around beneath me. That's just adventure. I like the bivvying. I like hanging out on top of mountains. It's beautiful. I like being in very remote places and knowing that nobody knows where I am. If you can talk, go hi there. Because I fly professionally as well, it's my job, so I go flying as much as I can. Realistically, only half your brain is involved in the pleasure you're getting from this. Whereas when I come here, then my full brain is engaged in getting the most out of it and enjoying flying. Africa, fantastic.
However, before heading north for the mountains, they need a few practice flights to test all their equipment. To begin with, a low hill just outside the capital Addis Ababa looks ideal. These test flights are vital, not just for safety. When they later head into the Simien Mountains, they'll need to be ready to launch quickly if they see good cumulus clouds forming, indicating strong thermals building.
Okay, found our first takeoff. It's not the best because there's a load of bushes we've got to thrash ourselves through to actually get into the air. But I've got a feeling it'll be okay. Bagsy not first. There's our runway.
First to fly will be Innes Powell. He's more used to the peaceful rolling hills of Devon, where he runs a paragliding school. He draws on his years of experience to find some rising air over this low hill. The big field below is an ideal landing zone, as long as it doesn't get too crowded.
And the clouds are looking fantastic. Go on then, give it a pull.
Thousands turn out to watch the circling paragliders. They've only been in Ethiopia a day, and already they're local celebrities.
Okay, first hit of Africa. got myself a big bunch of mates. Jim and Innes coming down now.
For Innes, it's an amazing way to end his first flight in Africa.
How was that then, mate?
Very nice, actually. Very nice. I just couldn't believe, honestly couldn't believe the mobbing. It was just like being a rock star. It blew me away. I just wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't prepared for it. I just didn't know. I picked a big field to land in, big green field, with no one in it, and landed there, and then there were 500 people instantly, this far away. Before I came out to Africa, I had no idea what the conditions would be like, or what the environment would be like, how harsh it would be. But I didn't really worry about it. I kind of just looked forward to it. I'm quite keen now to get going. Never had a look at it.
Day 2, and after a night out clubbing, Bob, the expedition leader, needs some warm air to clear his head. A short drive takes the guys to a great launch site. It's their last chance to test the gliders, this time with their heavy cross-country kit.
Unfortunately, we were out until 5 o'clock last night dancing, so we're all feeling a little bit weary. Aye.
Their fame has followed them, with Ethiopian TV turning up to film their progress. Conditions are perfect, the cumulus forming above, indicating good thermals. They soar to cloud base at an exhilarating 1,000 feet, over 300 meters a minute. On their backs, they're carrying 45 kilos, all they need to bivouac when they set off for the mountains tomorrow.
Practice day, just getting some air time on the gliders, checking out the weight of the gliders, how the harnesses are balanced. It's quite nice, we've got some nice clouds today to show us what's happening. But the air is quite unstable today. The crowd control is sorted, so that's nice. Yeah, Jim's up there now, just watching Jim flying. He's had a couple of flights today, but I think this is his best one. I think he's had kick problems, trying to sort his harness out. So yeah, things are coming together now.
Here comes our man.
Sanskrit scholar Jim has flown in India as well as the UK, but still finds Ethiopia a bit of a culture shock.
It's obviously strange having all this this high-tech clothing and these expensive gadgets of cameras and radios and what have you. And there is I suppose it does put a barrier between you and the people when you do land.
Makes a ton of difference just getting some airtime.
Still not fitting in the harness, but I'll work on that. I was yesterday. I think someone's fiddled with it. It was good. Nice to get in the air properly.
Yeah, when I'm flying, I love that feeling of peace and solitude and being totally dependent upon yourself. You can be very scared. There are some flights, I've had long flights where you're concentrating really hard all the time and there's rough air and you're worried about what's going to happen and what decision you're going to make and where you're going to get to. And during those flights, it's very rare that there's a moment when you're thinking, wow, this is fantastic. Occasionally you go on a glide, but most of the time you're really concentrating hard. And it's only after you land that it just sinks in what you've been doing and quite how fantastic it was. Part of the attraction for me is that you can have this thing that's in a bag and you can fly around like a bird and fly thousands of feet up in the sky and fly for miles, even if sometimes it is a bit stressful.
Testing complete, they're excited and ready to go. But a warm front brings in rain, dashing their hopes. It's a far cry from the image of Ethiopia as a country of drought and famine. Not for the last time, Bob's forced into a change of plan.
The initial plan that I drew up when I looked at the maps was to fly north up this big escarpment and then come inland into the Ethiopian highlands, and as soon as we got to the first hill we knew it wasn't going to happen. There was mist and fog clagged in all over it and the local people were saying, oh yes, always misty here. Right. So we changed plans really rapidly. It's great that you can do that in a small group and everyone was kind of mellow enough just to go, yeah, right, sod that, it's not working here, get in the car, drive north to Lalibela, to where we know it's more inland and we know it's in the mountains more.
So rather than flying, they're now driving 2 days and some 300 kilometers north to Lalibela in search of better weather. It'll be their jumping off point for the Simien Mountains and their ultimate goal, Mount Ras Dashan.
Lalibela is famous for these rock-hewn churches built in the 12th century, which are pretty incredible. We didn't come here specifically to see them because it's also an incredible flying site. But the combination of the two means there's some decent places to stay and there's a bit of infrastructure. You can fly in and out of here.
These ancient churches were carved out of the rock by long-forgotten craftsmen. Legend says, with the assistance of angels. Maybe Bob needs to pray for a little divine intervention if the rain clouds are to clear by tomorrow. A new day, and the warm front's moving off, bringing better flying conditions.
The drivers shoot here.
We've had a warm front go through. It rained all day yesterday. It was absolutely foul, and everything got soaked. All our clothes got wet, and sleeping bags, and it's pretty miserable, really. We had some good fun. Played a bit of golf on our little lawn here. So finally, the weather's cleared. Warm front's gone through. Got good cumulus forming. Looks like it's going to be a nice day. Looks like it might be a low base day. We've only got 5 or 6 more flying days, really, so we've got to go today. I think what we're trying to do today is fly around here and get ourselves to the point of commitment, which is about 40 kilometers away. There's a mountain top, and if you land on top of that, you can still get back to here. If you don't land on the top of that and you commit yourself to beyond, towards Rastashan, then you're on big walkings. So if we get there early, we'll just cruise straight across, I think, and try and go for Rastashan. If we get there in the afternoon, if they're going slow, we'll just hang out there for the night.
The thermals lift the gliders up towards the cloud base at 15,000 feet, over 4,500 meters. But just outside the thermals, there's sinking air, and crossing between the two streams means meeting turbulence that could collapse a glider. Just staying aloft is an adrenaline rush.
Bob, this is a little bit of trouble with my yoga headset, so I'm just going to be able to hear, I'll be able to transmit with difficulty.
The gliders can fold up in severe turbulence and very strong lifting air or sinking air, which keeps you on your toes.
Woo!
And you fly into air that's lifting at 2,000 foot a minute.
Cloud surfing at its best.
And you might be descending through the air at the time at, I don't know, 100 foot a minute. The difference is quite amazing when you hit it.
Woo! Rock and roll!
Then you have to make a decision. Do I turn left in this, do I turn right in this?
I fancy going onto the mountain just behind, actually, the next one along. It's got a good southeasterly slope to it.
The last thing you want to do is go falling out this rising air.
These clouds are getting big. Getting big at 1:30 in the afternoon is not a good sign.
Bob's worried that a storm might be developing, so rather than risk having to ditch suddenly in the mountains, they'll turn back to Lalibela and try again tomorrow. Expert paraglider Bob Drury and 2 friends have come to Ethiopia in search of the ultimate in cross-country flying. They aim to reach Ras Dashen, Ethiopia's highest mountain, but first they need good weather.
I'm hot. It's really hot here.
I'm hot.
And I'm really glad to be at Lalibela.
I think if you're well into churches, it's
They're
pretty impressive, the stone churches, but I'm just glad to be out of it, really, and on our way up the hill.
But tonight, regardless, we're on a hill. Well, I mean, from when we get up here now, and we jump off, which we hopefully will, then, I don't know, we could be anywhere. We could be anywhere in Africa this evening. We could be sitting in someone's hut, we could be sitting on a ledge, we could be at the bottom of a valley, hating life.
Valley.
That's probably quite likely.
Full of hyenas.
Full of hyenas. Innes is scared of hyenas.
I'm not scared, I don't know enough about them.
Easy, mate. It's all about yogic breathing techniques.
Bob scans the horizon looking for the best launch site.
What I'm kind of proposing is go over there, and then if that's no good, go to that one.
Each of them is packing 45 kilos of kit, including their bivouac tent for nights in the mountains.
Right. It's a bit heavy.
Terrible.
How you finding it, big fella?
Hey. Stroll in the park.
Luckily, Innes has a porter to help him out with all the climbing.
End of our first walk. How'd you find that,
tough. Really tough going.
mate? Nearly killed us. We found an incredible takeoff. Faces.
A steep south-facing slope in the sun. The perfect takeoff. But is it too late to fly?
So, indecision amongst the group. Do we jump or do we not?
You aim to cross over. It's sort of the, what is it, 15k across the other side?
15k glides to the side, I reckon. It's just too late to jump off now. It's like 3:15. I'm ready, and this is ready. Jim's not ready yet. He's going to be another 20 minutes. It's going to be 3:30, 4:45. It's just not worth jumping off. So, we are sat in a fantastic location. Nice bivvy. Sit out amongst the stars. First night in Africa, away from people. A lot of room in here, guys.
Are you sure this is a 4-man bivvy?
We put off flying yesterday because we thought we'd have a cracker today. We didn't want to risk going down in the evening, in the afternoon, back to Lalibela. But we cocked up maybe, because it's rained all night long. We're not sure whether it was just massive overdevelopment yesterday or it could even be some kind of frontage stuff. But we're basically in low pressure and it's a bit messy. The weather turned bad on us and we decided to walk down to the road, and we walked down to the road and then we sat on the side of this pretty well made road, which has made it all the more surprising. We sat there for about 4 or 5 hours without a single vehicle going past. Could be.
Eventually, they do manage to hitch a lift back to Lalibela. Time to forget the day's frustrations. Things are much better in the morning. Conditions are perfect as they prepare the gliders.
Somehow life seems a little nicer now.
It does seem a bit better to be on a hill with the wind blowing up it, as opposed to down it.
Yeah, Jim's up!
This is what they've been waiting for. At last, all 3 of them are in the air and heading north towards Ras Dashen. But as they come over a small mountain, a crosswind catches Bob by surprise, blowing him into rotoring air that sucks him out of the sky. Suddenly, he's fighting to control his glider.
That was a crash. I've just fought the glider for the last 500 foot and just ditched out. Luckily, I've landed here. I've not hit any of the rocks. Well, I hit that one and hit that one, but we came in through some rotor. There's a bizarre, like, northeasterly wind blowing here, coming through a high col, and it just made it rotor. God, I just fell out the sky. And Jim, Innes has landed there, and Jim's landed, well, Jim's got rotated in the back of the mountain. We don't know what's going on. I hope he's alright. That was close. That was very close to being broken leg or something. What do you reckon to that then?
No way. Not bad. Not bad, mate, but Jim's had a bit of a mare of a day.
He's had a nightmare of a day.
Yeah.
13 months of sunshine. Oh dear. That's what happens when you fly into a warm front. So we're running for Lalibela. Hopefully get some more flying in there.
Jim unfortunately didn't make the hill and got rotated quite heavily and landed low down on the hill. Landed fine, but had to get some locals to carry his kit to the top for him.
And chop down the tree.
And they chopped the tree down for him. We're now in a warm front and it's just piddling down. So we decided to walk out. We're walking out to a road which is down this way. It's about, well, it's not too far away, it's probably 3 or 4 kilometres down this way. But we might have a long yomp once we get to the road.
Thank you. Walking out now. Hard work. Very hard work.
A few bruised egos are all they've suffered, but Raz Dashin will have to wait. It's time to store their heavy cross-country packs and go for some free flying. Innes just misses the crowds again, but crashing into a graveyard isn't a great idea.
So Innes has crashed on his birthday, coming in to get this, got it wrong, somehow didn't land in the right field and instead has crashed it over there next to the crowd of a bazillion people.
Oh, the crash man is coming!
At the end of the flight the day before yesterday, we decided to land in the centre of Lalibela, in the town. Big football pitch is about. I sank out before I got to the football pitch. I think I crashed into someone's tomb.
Innes!
I gave my head a good donk when I went in, and I was fairly concussed, and instantly I was surrounded by 500 people, all wishing to carry equipment for me, and I didn't know whether it was Easter or Christmas. I'd had such a good donk on the head. But I was alright after a beer. That's the main thing.
Bob, Innes and Jim came to Ethiopia to soar over some of Africa's highest mountains. Bad weather meant a few changes of plan, but they found the big thermals they dreamt of, and even ended up local celebrities.
Flying in Ethiopia, the train that we've been flying over is completely different than anything I've experienced before.
In simple terms, it's strong, reliable, big climbs, going to high cloud bases. For me, it's some of the best flying I've ever had, really. Just even pottering around here, you know, we haven't been able to go any big distances, but such is life, you know.
Some of the thermals we've had out here in Ethiopia have been whoppers.
It's been fairly adrenaline fueled because there's been some very strong thermals. We've been screaming up higher than I've ever been. It's been fantastic. I've been up to 14,500 feet.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. But it's what you're flying over and who you're meeting when you land. I think that to me is definitely a major part of it.
Ethiopia, I think this has been fantastic, and I'll be back. Well, my stirrup's too short, my harness ain't very comfy, but I'm at cloud base in Africa.
ice. It's just a line of ridging that's happening, probably across perhaps a mile or more east to west, and we've hit it probably pretty much in the middle. So it's pretty slow. So I'm going to try and find a place to cross it. I'm relieved there isn't some massive rubble field extending as far as the eye can see.
So Penn's journey can continue without him having to take a massive detour. After dragging his heavy sledge over the pressure ridge, it's business as usual, trudging through the white Arctic wasteland.
Certainly for people who've never been there before, all they see is white. How dull, how boring, where's a tree, where's a gorilla, where's something interesting, show me something interesting. And in fact, you tune up over a few days and start to see all sorts of things that you wouldn't see initially. So the shades become important. You actually realise that there's no white out there whatsoever. I've never seen white snow ever out in the Arctic. It's always shades and tones of greys and blues and yellows and greens.
It's an environment that can also create various shades of madness.
There are quite a few stories of people almost immediately starting to crack, and some of them have to be restrained by people, and the police have to look after them, and they are sometimes even sedated before they get sent back. So it can happen very quickly. I think one of the reasons is that it is such a different environment. It gives you so few references that are common to one. The scale is so huge, there are no buildings, there are no lampposts. You can't scale the size of the scene that you're looking at because there's nothing out there that you know the size of.
Add to that lack of any reference the fact that Penn is alone and will be for several more weeks to come. A perfect recipe for loss of sanity, unless you have a psychological strategy.
I found in the past, when I'm on solo expeditions, that I tend to create a bit of a household in my tent. Welcome to tent life. About minus 35, minus 30, minus 35. The first thing I'd like to do is to introduce you to my close friend, who's become a great support on the expedition. We met in Resolute. Her name is Mavis. And this is Mavis. She's a snowbrush, and as you can see, she's a blonde. She's an artificial blonde, bless her. And she's been a very busy girl on this expedition, brushing snow endlessly off me and my sleeping bag and my boots and their liners and gloves and mitts. We chat away, and I do most of the chatting, but she talks back sometimes. There was Mr. Gun, who was always referred to as Mr. Gun out of respect, because it was always loaded and obviously a potentially lethal weapon. Outside of the tent, what I found happened, and I hadn't really done this before, first was I gave my sledge a name. The sledge, is Basker's. She's named after my dog. He's got a black shiny nose, and most of the time he doesn't want to come with me when I do my training runs on Dartmoor at home. My two ski poles, they're quiet characters, girls. They're Scandinavian model types, quite slim. I call them my girls, or the girls. And the skis, my skis I just refer to as the boys. I love them dearly. And the significance of that, apart from making me sound slightly mad, oh yes, which is not the case, I am abnormally normal. That's how I would like to see myself. I am the most normal person I know. The role of this team was that I used to verbalise my thoughts, and I found this incredibly effective, and it's not happened before. I would explain to the team, I'd say, guys, girls, this is the situation. We're going to go left of that nugget over there, aim for the white-headed camel, and when you see the cathedral, start bearing right. You are a very good boy.
Having a team to talk to fends off loneliness, but Penn also needs to be distracted from the seemingly endless journey.
So for the first 2/3 typically of a 10 to 12 hour day, I was tended to be able to think about all sorts of subjects. I designed a pocket yacht. It had so many features on it, I think it would have sunk without trace, all my special gadgets that I had on board.
I designed a terrace for my wife at home, which I know she wants, and I went through an invitation list in my head for my 40th birthday party.
But when he's inside his tent at the end of each day, he mustn't allow himself to get distracted. Carbon monoxide poisoning is a real danger from his gas stove. Technically, he should cook outside, but it's just too cold.
Oh, yes.
To keep his spirits up, he carries photos of his family with him. His son Wilf, daughter Freya. Back home in Dartmoor, Penn's family are also thinking about him and where he is at the moment.
I think he's got to there, so if I draw across and you join them up.
Where? There?
Yeah.
Also in the house, Penn's expedition manager Ian Wesley keeps in regular touch by satellite phone.
Hi Penn, how are you today?
I'm alive and well, thank you very much.
Good, 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 good. How's the wind outside?
Pretty horrendous.
Still high?
Getting meaningfully
stressed out about it.
Right.
I don't know that I'm going to go out today either.
Today's April the 11th, and April the 12th, tomorrow is Freya, my 1-year-old's daughter's birthday, and I've been...
There's been a lot of open water today.
No matter how often Penn has to put his immersion suit on and cross open water, he still can't get used to it.
It just seemed like an unnatural act. You're on your own, totally alone. If anything happened, there wasn't going to be any help that was going to get you in any meaningful time frame. So you'd lower yourself in and you were completely vulnerable in the water to a polar bear attack.
Dangerous as they are, though, there's only a slight chance of encountering a polar bear. The real killer is thin ice. A moment's loss of concentration when not wearing his dry suit, and Penn could suddenly find himself plunging through the ice with no protection. 45 days into his expedition, tired out, this is exactly what happens. British explorer Penn Haddo is more than 6 weeks into his attempt to walk solo from the North American coastline to the North Geographic Pole without any support. The first 30 or so days were characterized by intense cold, but moving northwards has brought Penn into the land of perpetual daylight. More sun has lifted the temperatures a little, but that's brought a new danger, thin ice. Tiredness is another major threat. Up to 10 hours a day, walking on the ice, clambering over pressure ridges, and swimming through open water have taken their toll. Penn is exhausted, and there's still at least 30 more days to go.
I noticed in reviewing some of my videotape of earlier part of the expedition that I was using the wrong words. I knew I was saying the right words in my head, but the wrong words were coming out, or in the wrong order, or the numbers were back to front, which is very much a feature of sort of brain function at really cold temperatures in the -40 to -50 degree bracket. Probably still talking garbage.
Fatigue, cold, and the relentless mechanical process of moving one ski in front of the other are taking their toll. Penn has now all but given up many of his mental exercises, such as designing yachts and buildings in his head.
I think about the bait, and within 3 seconds, 5 seconds, I was thinking about, basically about navigating, because that seemed to be easier. Couldn't maintain a sequence of thoughts.
Aware of the tricks his mind is playing, Penn now tries to find other ways to focus his thoughts.
There were two Penn Haddos out there. There was Penn Haddo the guide and Penn Haddo the explorer. I was treating myself as if I was a client. That way I would be much less likely to injure myself or lose my life. If that didn't work, what seemed to naturally kick in was this image I had of my son Wilf picking daffodils in his shorts around Easter time. And it was a beautiful, beautiful image I had of my son and our house. And I thought, well, if I died, I wouldn't be able to ever see Wilf like that again.
On the morning of day 45, Penn senses he's approaching thin ice. Reflexes take over, and he undoes the toe straps of his skis. Falling through the ice would be bad enough, but with the skis tightly fixed to his feet, he might never be able to climb out of the water, with fatal consequences. So part of his mind is aware there's danger ahead, and normally at times like this, the image of his son would make him think twice about pushing his luck too far. But this time, he has little control over his own mind. The mental picture of Wilf is buried too deep.
It didn't kick in, and it was the first time that it hadn't kicked in. Alarm bells should have been ringing in my head, deafeningly loud. So I skied out across this thin ice. The edge started to cave in as my full weight got loaded onto it. So you find yourself skiing deeper and deeper in the water, trying to go almost uphill up the ice to climb back out onto better ice, but you can't ski fast enough forwards compared to the speed at which the ice is sinking, and of course it does break up eventually. And we're talking about it over about a second or two, all of this happens. The overriding sensation I had was of shock that I had let myself get into this situation. I suddenly realised how foolish I'd been.
Penn has slipped over the edge of the ice into the inky black water beneath.
I was submerged and was swimming up to my neck in water, fully clothed. I did not have the immersion suit on for this.
Without the immersion suit, he has less than a minute to save himself.
Screaming for help is not going to do you a great deal of good, solo several hundred miles from the nearest human being. The only priority, total focus of everything you do until you are safe, is to get out of the water onto firm ice. You start to feel your energy go because you're thrashing around trying to get yourself up and out. If you aren't out in sort of 15 to 30 seconds, you have to kick into a different energy system. So you move away from the fight or flight routine and you switch into a different system which can't deliver the same level of output of energy, and that's quite scary. So if you can get out in the first 10 or 15 seconds, that's good news. And I did.
He's out of the water, but his problems aren't over. Apart from being soaking wet and freezing cold, he can only see one of his skis. He doesn't have any spares, so he must find it. Amazingly, despite the cold and the urgency of the situation, he still finds time to set his camera up to film the search.
I looked at the area that I'd been swimming around in, where a lot of broken plates of ice, and couldn't see the ski. I thought it must be just below some of these plates of ice. And I thought, right, well, this is the absolute priority now. I've got to find my ski, and I was sure it was going to be there, so I just put in my immersion suit on there and then, absolutely sodden and pretty cold. I suppose it was about -25, and lowered myself back into the water, swam around looking and feeling for this ski, convinced I'd find it any moment, and didn't. I've been in very cold hands and had to, fingers particularly, and had to now get out, abandon that search, and now start looking after myself.
The priority now is to get warm again. He really has no choice now but to carry on walking without skis. It will be slower and more dangerous, but his dunking in the ice-cold Arctic Ocean has, if anything, made him even more determined to reach his goal.
It is essentially a secular pilgrimage. Secular in the sense that it is not for religious purposes that I am doing this, but I am very aware, especially in this sort of bleak and sort of minimal landscape, that there is the opportunity for what might loosely be called spiritual development. Pilgrimages are all about making a journey to a particular point that you have invested huge value in. And you don't go there in a Rolls Royce with luxury stopovers in hotels. You make it hard on yourself. You want to feel discomfort. You want to feel that you have had to go the extra mile, have put yourself through something to make it worthwhile. The sledging lifestyle is monastic, and I love that. It is very simple. You only have the barest essentials with you. When you are out in the cold, your hood often is up. It's like a monk's hood. So one is leading a simple life. One's worried about, one is tired, one is hungry, one is thirsty, one is refreshed in the morning and ready for the next day's onslaught.
But on day 50, the only onslaught is by a storm raging outside the tent. For 3 days, Penn can't move, and he's hoping his food supplies will last for the rest of the expedition. He spends his time sleeping, making repairs to equipment, reading, and occasionally calling his expedition manager back in England.
Having to eat some food, but I'm not on full rations, and it's going to start getting critical about how much food I've got to finish this.
On day 53, he's able to pack up his tent again and move on. Mentally, he's feeling more tired than at any other point in the expedition. Yet he still has to remain alert for thin ice and for polar bears. His only defence against the bears is his shotgun. But on day 54, the gun breaks.
The barrel would open up, but when I pushed it shut, it wouldn't click shut. And it had obviously taken a big knock while strapped to the top of my sledge during the day.
One thing is changing in his favour. The sledge is getting lighter as his food and fuel supplies dwindle. On days 62 and 63, he decides to make a big push towards the pole, despite being utterly exhausted.
I pushed very hard. I did sort of 20-hour days for the last 2 full days. I was very tired. There was an enormous pressure on myself to do it, to just reach the pole. You know, this will I, won't I that was going on in my head had to be answered. I had to know the answer. I'd got so far, I was so nearly there, but I wasn't there. I couldn't believe it. For 2 days I don't think I'd used my immersion suit, and 2 kilometres, 2,000 metres short of the pole, I hit a jagged bit of open water. So I put the immersion suit on, crossed it, and then thought, right, well, I really hope we're not going to get lots of bits of water like this in the last 3 kilometres, and I'll get there, but that won't be any fun. And in fact that was the last open water. Only when I was 1,500 metres away did I know that I was going to reach the pole. Absolutely going to reach it. When I was 500 metres from the pole, I had my GPS global position system out in my hand.
He knows he's going to reach the pole, but finding it is not easy.
You can't just take a straight line, walk to the North Pole, and there you are. Because Pan invariably is drifting, all the ice is drifting.
Penn feels sure that the drifting pan of ice he's now walking on is the one where he'll find the pole.
And then suddenly I found myself at 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, just standing still, and I was drifting obviously just upstream of the flow of the ice. 0.8, 0.9. I was on the top of planet Earth, and the Earth was spinning around the point upon which I stood. It just looked like another piece of ice. I mean, the pole, when I arrived, could have been in the middle of some water. Might have to have swum to it. I wasn't actually interested in being the first. I wasn't interested in breaking a record. For me, what has value is in breaking new ground and proving what is possible that has not previously been done. And in some small way, in a very specific field, i.e. the polar world, pushing back the boundaries.
The following day, newspapers, TV and radio news programmes around the world trumpet Penn's achievement. But the expedition isn't over yet. He has to get off the ice. Despite rapidly fading batteries, he's called the air charter company on his sat phone to let them know his position. But their ability to reach him depends entirely on the weather conditions.
I had about 18 hours of good, really good weather, and things could have turned out very differently, and I could have perhaps been picked up in that spell and been back home quite quickly. As it happened, the planes weren't able to get to me in that time frame, although in theory they could have done, but they weren't in the appropriate location to achieve that. So I missed that weather window, and then we were in for a period of bad weather. I knew once the weather closed in that it would probably be more than a day or two. It might well be 3 or 4 days. It's all part of an explorer's life. It comes with the territory.
This is not the first time Penn has been stuck at the pole waiting for the pickup, but it's the first time alone. He has no way of knowing how long he'll be here, and he only has enough food for a few days.
I didn't actually tell people. I didn't let it be known that that's how little food I had, because I knew what would happen.
Penn worries people would say he's being irresponsible, while in his view it's all part of the plan. But the media does start airing concern, and over the next few days, unknown to him, he becomes an overnight celebrity. Not just for having walked to the pole, but for having to wait for the plane out.
What actually happened in the tent was nothing. I was monumentally bored.
But he does have one important job to do. He has to find an ice pan that is suitable for a landing strip for the pickup plane, measure it, then mark it out for the pilot.
It's a huge responsibility enticing an aircraft down onto a piece of sea ice of unknown thickness, and you've got the lives of the 2 pilots and the value of a plane, and the ramifications of something going wrong, some incident with an aircraft, are almost too appalling to think about.
9 days after arriving at the pole, Penn's food runs out. It's also the day the weather clears enough to allow the pickup plane to land and to carry him back to Resolute. The press go wild, but all that matters to Penn is that the ambition which has been chasing him for over 15 years has now been realised. He can now reclaim the rest of his life.